Hi, good morning, everyone. We're going to start the session real shortly. Before we start, I'm just going to start with some house rules. Where possible, do turn on your camera so that we can see your face. It will be nicer and more like a Q&A that way. And also, anytime throughout the dialogue, if you have any questions, do feel free to drop them in the chat, where our student moderator, Pi, will be looking at. Alternatively, if you find like a suitable break in a conversation where you would like to ask the question, you may use the raise hand function, and then our Pi will call on you to ask your question. Right, so now I'll pass the time over to Pi and we'll kick off the session.
All right, a very good morning to our parents, guardians, and NTU-USP applicants. Welcome to the second part of a three-part series of NTU-USP Gave Me, where we share more about life at NTU-USP and the opportunities that it offers our undergraduates. Today's session is titled NTU-USP Gave Me, a Broadened Worldview. And we'll be diving deep into the academic side of things, including things like modules, overseas learning opportunities, as well as exchange programs. I'm your host, Seong Hang, or simply Pi, and I'm a Year 4 student studying Communication Studies. This morning, we have with us a packed panel of faculty members, office staff, and of course, NTU-USP students to share more about the academics at NTU-USP right from our virtual NTU-USP studio, aka our homes. First up, we have Assistant Professor Justin Clark, who is the core faculty member of NTU-USP and coordinator for overseas learning. Good morning to you, Prof. Justin.
Good morning. Very happy to be here and looking forward to the session ahead.
All right. Up next, we have Dr. Rebecca Nichols, also known as Prof. Becky, and she is also a core faculty member and coordinator for external affairs and publicity. Good morning to you.
Hi, good morning, Pi. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. Also, so happy to be here and looking forward to our discussion.
Up next, we have Ms. Yvonne Lim, who is the Assistant Director of NTU-USP. Good morning, Yvonne.
Hi, everyone. Okay, welcome to these sessions. I hope you will find it useful. And please do feel free to ask questions because we are here to answer, all your queries and also concern. Thank you.
Yep. And up next, we have Daphne Tang, who is a Year 4 student studying Communication Studies. Good morning, Daphne.
Hello, everyone. Excited to share with you today.
And last but not least, we have Martin Koch, who is a Year 1 student studying Accountancy and Business. Good morning, Martin.
Yeah, good morning, Pi and everyone. Nice to be here and looking forward to the sharing session as well.
That's right. Thank you so much. And once again, we have a very good panel of people, so feel free to ask your questions. Today's session will start off with academics, followed by our travel overseas program for scholars or TOPS. And we'll finally end off with more about our exchange program, which is the study abroad program. So don't worry, today's sharing is not program specific. So if you're applying for courses like data science and artificial intelligence, or any other kind of science, engineering, or even COHAS courses, don't worry. It's really not program specific, and if you have questions, we'll still try to answer them today. You can also tune in to our next session on 3rd April, where we'll talk more about the life of science and engineering students at NTU-USP, and more information can be found in our Telegram channel. So today's session will mainly be a Q&A style kind of forum, so feel free to ask your questions anytime. As Jia mentioned earlier, you can ask your questions either in the chat on Zoom, or you can raise your hand and we'll give you the next opportunity to get your questions answered verbally. So once again, there's a raise hand function. I think if you go to, if you go to reaction, you can actually raise your hand. Okay, so use that function and we'll try and give you the next opportunity to ask your question. All right, so up next, so first up, we have, we'll start off with the academic side of things. So I'll throw the question to the floor for the professors as well as to Yvonne. So what are the kinds of modules that NTU-USP students can expect, particularly in year 1? Perhaps one of the professors. Yep.
Okay. All right. So what kind of modules can you expect in the year 1? Well, so as you probably know by now, NTU-USP is a very has a very broad-based ethos. So we try to expose students to really what we think of as the most important subjects and skills in those first-year required modules, and there are 4 of them. So all students will take a course first of all in writing and reasoning. And that is designed to prepare students for academic writing at the university level. So we expect that students will come in, having, writing skills that they developed, previously in their education, but we also understand that now they are going to be pursuing a path in particular disciplines. And so it's important for them to learn the type of writing that is appropriate for those disciplines. And you know, as with all our USP courses, they are taught in seminars. They're very small, intimate courses, and that's particularly important, I think, in a writing course, because you know, in order to improve as a writer, you need that close attention from the prof and from the peers and so forth. So that's what we do in that class. There's another class that's also very important, which is called Ethics. And it covers ethics. It also covers a bit of civics. And it really looks at a real variety of traditions, Western and Eastern. And you know, the idea there is that one will learn sort of some of the basic fundamental philosophical principles of ethics, but also learn how to apply those ethics. And I think that, you know, particularly if you're going, let's say, into the business world, you know, it's really crucial to have a grasp on these things. And that's why you know, most business schools now make a point of teaching ethics early on. And again, the advantage of ethics, you know, with USP is that you're learning in a very small class. You have really a lot of opportunity to explore, you know, whatever interests you, and to interface very, very regularly with the faculty and your fellow students. There's another course which is called Fieldwork and Documentation. And we are actually going to get to that. I think I will punt that question to Prof. Becky, who is the one who oversees that course. But in a nutshell, it's a course that teaches students how to do social science research, those sorts of methods. And again, these are skills that are, you know, we don't think that I mean, some small number of our students will be going into the social sciences professionally, but really the course is designed to have a kind of practical purpose, which is to teach students how to do the sort of research and analysis that they might, for example, find, again, to take an example from the business world, right? If you're doing any kind of marketing research, that is a kind of field work in a sense, right? And so the idea there is to build those skills and give students practice in that. And there's a very exciting trip immersion experience that goes along with that, but I won't spoil Prof. Becky's discussion of that. And then finally, we have a course on living well. And I suppose also Prof. Becky might want to add to this, but it's you know, I think there's a lot of concern now with wellness and, you know, coping with the kind of pressures that we're all under in a very sort of fast-paced society. It seems there's constantly more and more expected of us. And so, you know, I think this is a course that students will really appreciate having, so that they can learn about wellness, and they can learn about both, I guess, self-care, but also some broader issues about, you know, social health that go along with it. But I think maybe Prof. Becky, would you like to add?
Sure, yeah. So Prof. Justin did a great job here of summarizing the 4 core courses that all students would take in their first year. So Prof. Justin mentioned writing and reasoning and ethics. Fieldwork and documentation, again, is a very, very unique and special course for the NTU-USP. And I think we'll get to it a little bit later. Prof. Justin gave the basics of what the course is all about, but again, it's very special. And I think also we need some of the students to talk about their experiences from when they've gone through the module. So I'll hold off on that. The Living Well course is one that, as Prof. Justin mentioned, because there is a growing awareness of what we need to be able to live our lives meaningfully and to be able to manage the multitude of stressors that we deal with in this very high-paced, very demanding global society that we live in. Especially during the pandemic, I think a lot of us have started to look inward and think about, you know, what is it that we need to be able to sustain these types of collective stressors, but also just in our day-to-day lives as students, as scholars, as young professionals, as individuals who will go out into society and try to make a difference. What do we need to do for ourselves to be able to promote those sorts of things so that we're able to do all of that while also not being so stressed out that we can't manage the multitude of things that we want to be able to accomplish for ourselves, but also for others. So Living Well in line with the ethos of our program, which is highly interdisciplinary, I'm an experimental psychologist by training, and so I'll be approaching this class from a bit more of a positive psychology point of view. What have psychologists learned that can help us maintain that wellness in our everyday lives? But I'm also co-teaching with another NTU-USP core faculty member who comes from philosophy, and she'll be talking about philosophical approaches to what it means to live well. So this is not kind of a course in, I think there's a lot about kind of coming out about self-care and what does that mean and how do we find it. These are not just ideas that we have as individuals, but they're really rooted in scholarship, in our disciplines, and trying to take this interdisciplinary approach, which now more than ever, it's important to learn about these things to be able to sustain ourselves as individuals who are not just kind of racing every day, but also are able to do it in a way where we're able to maintain our physical and psychological health. So we're quite excited about that course. Again, these will be 4 core courses that all students will take in their first year. So the NTU-USP curriculum is quite flexible in the sense that those are all complete by the end of year 1. And then your NTU-USP electives, you can take really at any time when there's something that's offered later on. You're able to take at a point that it best fits with your schedule in your home major, let's say in the business school or in data science. So the curriculum is really exciting. Of course, I'm a little bit biased, but I feel like if I was an undergraduate, I would want to take all of our courses again. I hear from my colleagues about what they're teaching, and I always think, oh, if only I had the time to sit in those classes. It's a really dynamic and exciting curriculum that we have. So I think I'll just leave it at that for now. Maybe if any of the students want to jump in, feel free to.
Yeah, interject.
Yeah, sure. Go on.
Yeah, could I just one final? Yeah, thank you, Prof. Becky, for such a great explanation of those courses. I just wanted to say, so I think the original question was about what courses USP scholars take in their first years, but I want to make clear that they're actually beyond that, in their second, third, or even fourth years, they will take electives, and they're required to take 4 electives in most programs, and a few of the programs only 2 electives, but those again embody our liberal arts-ish ethos in that some of the electives must come from a basket called arts, humanities, and culture, and another is science, technology, and society. And these electives are, I mean, the best way to get a sense of what they are is just to go to our website, but they really cover a range of topics. Some are, for example, there's a course about artificial intelligence and creativity. I teach a course that's really, it's called Truth, Lies, and Hype, which is about the social history of truth. Prof. Becky has a course called Error and Bias, which looks, I think, from maybe a more quantitative perspective about how is it that people interpret or misinterpret statistics and so forth. So there's really a very interesting range of topics, and some of the electives, incidentally, have travel components, which we hope to resume as soon as the pandemic permits. So I really recommend everyone go to the website and take a look at the electives that we offer, and maybe we can even get a link up in the chat for people to do that later.
Yep, sure. Thank you so much to Prof. Justin and Prof. Becky for your sharing. So I think now's a good time to then ask the questions, right, to the students and what they feel about the program. So perhaps to Daphne and as well as to Martin, just give us a summary about what's the differences between NTU-USP modules and your own course modules, as given that Martin is from ACBS, Nanyang Business School, as well as Daphne from the School of Comms and Information. So could you just share a little bit about the differences between the modules? Martin, you want to go first?
Oh yeah, sure, no problem. Okay, so basically I take a double degree program in accountancy and business. So in this sense, the nature-wise of the modules that I take, say in the field of like finance, business and stuff, as well as the modules that are core modules that are offered in NTU-USP, the content-wise, it may be on 2 different ends of the scale, in the sense that finance and business, a lot more quantitative work involved. and the core modules that I take in NTU-USP are more qualitative in terms of essay writing, looking through readings and stuff. But I find that actually being exposed to both ends of the spectrum actually helps in complementing the courses that I take, not only in my core major of accountancy and business, but also likewise has a reciprocative effect on the the core modules that I also take in NTU-USP. Because say, for example, through looking at readings of perhaps ethics, or maybe like in the field of philosophy in terms of writing and reasoning, helps you to broaden your mindset in the sense that you are forced to think from different, various new perspectives that you may not have considered before. And all these skills are essentially transferable to either of the modules that you are taking, be it in your core major in terms of, for me, in the field of business, or be it can be also applied back to NTU-USP core modules themselves. So it gives you a very broad view of everything that's coming in, henceforth how to analyze this whole, all the information on a much larger scale they are being exposed to turn it into insights that are actually turn into actionable insights, and therefore after that implement them in the work itself.
Okay, thank you so much, Martin. And Daphne, just briefly as well on the differences.
Yeah, everyone. So I take communication studies at the Weekly School. So it's still under the Coher School. For my experience, because Weekly courses tend to be more practical, for example, how to write a public press release or some media related practical skills. So what USP modules offer is also similar to Martin, that broad perspective, as well as more shaping your thinking and critical discussion to discuss social issues. So for example, some of the modules that I've taken are the great ideas that we discuss social issues such as the resolved presidency and 377A. So we debated in class, and because of the small class size, we were able to hear perspectives from our classmates from different faculties, and that gives us a different perspective into what what my friend from public policy will consider, or what my friend studying business will consider, and that offers a more rounded perspective. So that's what I really enjoy about NTU-USP classes. So speaking for my friends from other humans courses, even though their regular course modules tend to involve a lot of reading already, what NTU-USP modules, how NTU-USP modules differ from their own course will be the breadth of topics that you can learn about. So for example, we have modules like love and sex, global art history, and stuff like that you don't really find in your home core faculty. So the NTU-USP courses allow you to explore topics that you maybe wouldn't have considered before.
All right, thank you so much for your sharing. Okay, so we'll just move on to the next question. The next question is perhaps more for Yvonne from the office side. Is the NTU-USP curriculum more academy rigorous, or is the academic load different? Because I think that's a question that a lot of parents have as well, as well as students. So Yvonne, just shed some light on the academic load.
I wouldn't say that the load would be higher, because if students were to check online for most of the academic units across all programs, or all programs that come with NTU-USP, basically they are the same. What does that mean? Meaning that, if you are from DSAI, for example, data science, you'll be required to study about 128 AUs. Now, if you take on NTU-USP, eventually you will still be taking only 128 AUs. And how does that work? It's simply that, in the curriculum in NTU, we do have something called the broadening electives, or right now we are still calling it as the unrestricted elective, where students are given the opportunity to study, many different free electives, that's coming from different schools. So what NTU-USP will do is that we will replace all these unrestricted electives with our NTU-USP curriculum. So therefore, at the end of the day, to answer Pi's questions, yes, I would think that, you know, the workload will be similar. However, I will also want to defer these questions back to maybe Prof. Becky and Prof. Justin, because being a faculty, you know, they dealt with the students more, and usually students will also, you know, be sharing some of the load, probably also to Pi, because, you know, you being the senior students and also went through the same process with us, same experience. So probably students will also be able to, you know, share, are you actually doing more with NTU-USP? Maybe yes, because if you're very active in the NTU-USP student club, okay, but that is apart from the curriculum itself.
Yeah, okay, so we'll just get one of the profs just to quickly run through what your experience has been interacting with students from NTU-USP and whether it's academically different.
Okay, so maybe I'll just jump in here really quickly. I think for faculty, we our modules, just like other modules in NTU, typically are 3 academic units. And so, excuse me. Okay, because of that, we don't want to burden our students with additional work in our modules such that they're overloaded and super stressed and they have a higher workload than other students, because at the end of the day, the modules are still 3 academic units each. However, being in the NTU-USP, we find that our students are really hungry for that breadth of knowledge and the wide array of topics, and not just separate topics, but synthesis of those topics, both within individual classes, but also with their home majors. So because of that, the classes tend to be a bit more interactive. They maybe require more preparation on the part of the students because we're in really small seminar style meetings. So there's a lot of discussion, there's a lot of interaction and engagement with the material. I always mention to students that if you're looking for a set of modules where you're in a big lecture theater with a lot of students and you can kind of hide in the background and just, you know, kind of stay behind your screen, and no matter if you didn't read that week because nobody would ever find out, that may not be the type of environment that you would find in the NTU-USP, and therefore our program may not be a super great fit for you. If you're really looking to dive deep into whatever it is that we're working with in the module, have very lively discussion and interaction, and you know, the benefit of being in that small space with other students, but also with faculty members and having that depth of immersion, then NTU-USP definitely is the place for you. It may require or feel like it is a little bit, I suppose, may take a little bit more energy to go out of that comfort zone. But again, we find that that's what our students are looking for in the program. If Prof. Justin or if any of the students want to add on, please feel free.
Well, maybe I'll just contribute an analogy, which I have not used before, but I think in a way it's a little bit like going to a gym and having a personal trainer work with you, right? The personal trainer might work you a little bit harder than you would work yourself, but I think the way that translates is that you end up getting more energy, more capacity out of that experience, and that makes actually the rest of your activity that much easier, right? So in other words, if you learn how to do a research project efficiently in a course like fieldwork and documentation, or if you learn how to write a paper efficiently in writing and reasoning, you know, that is actually going to make the rest of your time at NTU that's much smoother and fulfilling, and so I think in a way you can think of this as it's not just, you know, is this module more challenging than that module, but rather you know, is this something that actually will make the rest of your university experience better, right? And give you you know, a little bit more skill to get the most out of it.
All right, thank you.
Brilliant. Yeah, a brilliant analogy. It pays dividends for all of our business students in the chat today.
Yes, thank you so much, Profs, for sharing. I would just like to share perhaps from the perspective of a year 4 who has gone through pretty much most of the program now. I would say that the academic load-wise, on paper, it's the same as what Yvonne mentioned. It's a 1-for-1, so we're just merely substituting some of your unrestricted electives for NTU-USP core and elective modules. So that is the same. And just to summarize as well on Prof. Becky's end, that perhaps you could get a bit more involved just in terms of readings or participation in the class, just because of the small sized nature of classes. And because if you don't already know, NTU-USP, we generally take in approximately 50 per batch, so that adds up to roughly about 200 people in the program at any point of time. So I would say that definitely in terms of academic rigor, it definitely challenges you, because I think especially if you're from backgrounds like data science, or if you're from ACBS, or even just Nanyang Business School, it really changes your thinking. Right? If I have friends from both programs, and they really come in here, they feel a bit refreshed, because perhaps for the rest of the day, they are thinking about things like business, or they are thinking data. But when they are in the NTU-USP class, most of the time they're really challenged in terms of their thinking. And I find that I observe that my peers are much better at reasoning, much better at articulating their thoughts down the line. I can really see the growth basically, and I think that's something that that I've taken away, that I've seen my friends take away from the program as well. So it's challenging definitely in terms of the fact that you have to kind of switch your mind a little bit, but at the same time, I think it really helps people to kind of articulate reasons. I think it really helps people to think from a broader perspective beyond their home program, and I think that's something that is quite valuable. Yeah, for NTU-USPians that I've interacted with in my 4 years. So yeah, that's the takeaway from my end. Okay, well, I guess we'll just move on to
There's something to add.
yeah,
Something
sure.
to add.
Go
Right.
ahead.
So in JC, I took biochem, what was that? Math and econ. So it was very science. It was a science stream, and then in class we didn't really have to speak, because we just learned the facts and we learned how to explain and phrase our answers, and that was all. So I think when I was considering whether to join NTU-USP, I think one of my worries was, what am I going to say in class? If it's so much discussion, I don't know, how to frame my thoughts, how to reason, and how do I prepare for that? So I think, yeah, so I just went with it, right? And over time, there's a lot of support that NTU-USP gives. So the profs, there are readings that you can help to get some base knowledge that will, that will inspire you to ask questions, I guess, and hear from other people in the class. Because it's such a small class and you kind of know everyone in your batch, because it's only 50 people. It feels very safe, even if you offer, maybe your thoughts are not fully formed, but you can get advice from other people. What do they think? And that helps to shape your thinking also. So over time, the 4 years, you find yourself being able to share more in class, to share your thoughts in a more logical and rational way. And that, like Pai said, you can really see the growth in yourself and as well as your classmates. Yeah. So don't worry, there's a lot of support and consultations that you can request for with your profs if you want to, ask any questions. So don't worry about it.
Yep. Thank you so much, Daphne, for sharing. So once again, if you have any questions, remember you can send them in the Zoom chat, or you can raise your hand and we'll try and give you an opportunity to ask your question verbally. All right. So do send in your questions. Otherwise, we'll just keep cracking on with some of the questions that we prepared beforehand. So in the meantime, do type in your questions if you have any. All right, next section we'll just move on to is Fieldwork and Documentation, or AKA Travel Overseas Program for Scholars, or TOPS. And it's a very well-loved module among NTU-USPians. So Prof. Becky and Prof. Justin have already talked a little bit more about it. So perhaps Prof. Becky, could you just give us once again a quick overview of TOPS and what learning goals it has for its students, as well as of course some of the topics that have been covered in TOPS so far?
Sure, thanks, Pai. So Fieldwork and Documentation is also affectionately known as TOPS, which stands for the Travel Overseas Program for Scholars. That means that while we're learning all about how to conduct a research project that is largely in line with projects that one would conduct in the social sciences, arts, and humanities, the skills, as Prof. Justin mentioned before, are really transferable to any sort of research project that might be done in the future. So we've had students students come back and say, oh, these interviewing skills, these deliverable skills that I learned were directly applicable to my final year project or to my research project in the College of Science or College of Engineering, or of course, College of Humanities, Arts and Social Sciences. We really work quite hard to make sure that through this really rich learning experience, everyone is able to gain skills that will be available and useful for them, both in their future module work, but also as they go into their professions after university, of course, as well. We are so fortunate that through this project, which students work in teams of about 5 or so individuals to craft a research project from start to finish. So they really have ownership over the entire project, from learning how to craft a good research question to going out and talking to people and learning about, you know, what are the answers that we need to find to address our research question, to writing up a very good scholarly report and also producing a media deliverable. We do this all usually in the context of going overseas, the Travel Overseas program for scholars. So in previous years, we have been to Laos, we have been to Taiwan, both Taipei and Yilan County. We've been to Vietnam 1 year. TOPS was based in Ho Chi Minh City and also Mekong Delta. Another year, TOPS was based in Hanoi in the north and also Sapa. We have been to Hong Kong and Perth, and we try to go to a different location every year. Again, students are interested in topics related to the culture, individuals, livelihoods, major issues that are happening in those locations. So some of the topics that students have worked on in the past have to do with maybe heritage loss and preservation. Also maybe issues related to gender roles. How do gender dynamics play out in those locations? What are the effects of globalization and modernization in some of these locations? Sometimes students have worked on issues related to tourism. What are the issues faced by stakeholders in the tourism industry wherever we go? And so it's really kind of about learning about the individuals in society where we visit. Now, obviously, many of you are thinking, well, with the situation of the pandemic this year, how did TOPS play out? Maybe because Martin actually is our first year student who just completed our fieldwork exercise this year. I should also say that the fieldwork component is just 1 week component in the context of the module which takes place at NTU. Martin has actually just gone on fieldwork. Do you want to talk a little bit about your experience this year?
Yeah, sure, no problem. Thanks, Prof. Becky. So regarding the fieldwork itself, as mentioned, it was 1 week. So due to the circumstances of the pandemic itself, TOPS was held in Singapore for my batch this time. But however, what it was essentially, in a sense, we call it hopping. We went around the various islands around Singapore, like we've been going to the various Kelongs, understanding more about the fisheries in the area, as well as the southern islands. There's St. John's Island, Sisters Islands, Lazarus Island, so and so forth. But I think one of the main defining features of TOPS itself that I have taken away so far is that it trains you, even despite the fact that this whole program is held in Singapore, it trains you to look at Singapore yourself, Singapore as from a different lens, what you usually be having, say, as someone who is not engaged in this program itself, to find out more about what Singapore can offer. And through all these research, doing all these fieldwork, speaking with various stakeholders, such as being members of the public, find out more about their opinions and passions, or even because about the theme of this year, if I may share, was about marine life, and my group were doing on marine conservation itself. So speaking to stakeholders in the marine conservation sector, such as non-governmental organizations, people like marine enthusiasts who are highly interested in marine conservation, you get to discover a very different and unique side of Singapore itself that you may not have known, like maybe despite having been here for almost like the whole of your life or so. And I think the key feature of that, being held in Singapore is something that stood out to me. and allowed me to really develop a more greater insight into what was happening here locally, and to better appreciate the society and all the people that we have around here as a whole.
Thanks, Martin. Yeah, I just want to add on to that, you know, the faculty and management involved in NTU-USP were quite concerned about TOPS when the pandemic really just started to unfold. And we wanted to really make sure that if we were going to be in Singapore this year, that we still maintained that aspect of exposing our students to something new and different, something that they're maybe less familiar with, so that, you know, we didn't want our students to feel like they were disappointed that we would be home for TOPS this year. And this is how the maritime theme to the program came about this year. So we're quite, I think, pleased with the feedback from students. It seems like they had a good time, but also learned a whole lot while they were out during the fieldwork excursion. And we also kept the trip as much of a trip as possible. So we did have accommodation. We did have a full program for the fieldwork program, which included guest lectures coming in and different activities and different things happening, so that that sense of exposure was still there. We wanted to try to preserve that as much as possible. So, you know, the NTU-USP I think has been quite nimble in adapting to the challenges of staying home this year, and we have not lost the global exposure aspect of our program. So hopefully by the time that you come in, things will be better, but don't fret, because either way, we continue to work with what we have and ensure that that richness in our program, whether it's through our modules, through our community, through other experiences, will always be a part of our ethos and objective.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Prof. Becky, as well as Martin, for sharing about TOPS. So just to recap, TOPS is pretty much, or rather fieldwork and documentation, pretty much starts off with lessons in class where you craft your research question and you craft your qualitative research methods. And then after that, you go on a 1 week kind of TOPS trip. And that's when most of the fieldwork happens. And then after that, you end off with a bit submitting your research paper as well as your media deliverable. So I want to touch on a little bit about the media deliverable, actually, because I think that's one of the most interesting part of TOPS after the trip itself. So Prof. Becky, could you just share a little bit more about what students do in this part? Yep.
Sure. So even though this is a class based in qualitative research methods, and sometimes I think when we hear that, we think, oh my gosh, how dry and boring. We're just learning about these methods. Of course, I think there's a little more excitement now associated with the class because of this overseas component. But still, for some of us, learning about research methods and writing a research paper may not feel so exciting just based on hearing that. I think one of the unique aspects of this whole project experience is that it's not just the writing of the report, which actually is a really meaningful experience. You get so close to your data and you're able to articulate your findings. Thanks also to classes like writing and reasoning, which you will have taken before you get to TOPS. So it's all synergistic, the program that we have. That ends up being actually a meaningful and fulfilling experience. But on top of it, we want to have you have the opportunity to disseminate your findings both to a wider audience than just yourselves and your professors who would be the ones reading your paper, but also do it in a way that allows you to exercise your creativity. So as part of the deliverables for this module, you do create a media deliverable, which goes on exhibition in Lee Wee Nam Library, which is our largest library on campus. And it allows you to creatively present your findings in the context of mixed media, and the exhibits stay on exhibition for a few months in the library. So other passersby can take a look, see what your project was all about, and understand your findings through this very kind of creative means. Maybe some of our student representatives here want to talk about their media deliverables from previous years.
Yep. I was going to throw the question to Daphne. Daphne, could you share about what you did for context? For our year, we went to Ho Chi Minh City. Yeah, so Daphne, you want to share about that?
Okay. Actually, I have some photos to share also. I can share my screen. Hold on. Okay. How do I? Okay, right. So I went on TOPS twice. First was as a freshman when we went to Ho Chi Minh City. So this was my group, and we studied gender. Our topic was about gender. So how we framed our question was something related to youth and gender perspectives. So what are the youth in Vietnam thinking about how are they perceiving gender roles, and how is it like affecting their career plans and stuff like that. So we did a documentary, and we interviewed several students, university students in Ho Chi Minh City. So this is us after the interview. We interviewed these three girls here, and these are two of the profiles that we interviewed also. And this was at Lewinon Library, so as Prof. Vicky mentioned. And this is on the presentation day. This is Prof. Juni. She was guiding our documentary deliverable. So she gave us tips and helped us to develop our storyline. And yep. So this is our amazing race, which is one of the activities on the trip. So yeah, besides just the research, there's also classes during the trip itself where we'll kind of update all the groups about our research progress, and we get tips on how to proceed with further other interviews. And then I went on TOPS again as a returning senior, and this time my group was studying culture. So they wanted to see how globalization trends, for example, we went to Taiwan this year, this is in 2018, I think.
Yep, 2018. Yep.
Yeah, time passes so fast. Okay, yeah, so they were studying culture and they wanted to study food in relation to globalization trends. So for example, what you know of Taiwan now, their food scene, maybe you think about bubble tea and XXL fried chicken. So we wanted to see how traditional food in Taiwan has changed. And we visited a snake soup restaurant on one of the old market streets in Taiwan, and we interviewed one of the last remaining restaurant owners there. We also visited an Aboriginal village where we made rice in these bamboo poles, and they also interviewed one of the villagers there. I think the head of the village. And we also researched modern food trends. So we went to the night markets to see what kind of new offerings were available in the markets. And this was them with their media deliverable. So my previous group, we did a documentary. In this group, they did I think it was a report or mixed media kind of thing. So they made a photo book for the recording their journey and their thoughts and their interviews.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing. Very visual, and that's great. Always great to share some photos. Okay, thank you so much for sharing. We'll just move on to the next section, which is on our study abroad program. Once again, if you have any question today, please feel free to type it in the chat, or you can raise your hand and we'll give you the earliest opportunity to ask your question. Okay, so I'll move on to study abroad, which is our NTU-USP exchange program. So perhaps I could just move this question to either Yvonne or the faculty members. What is the difference between study abroad and Ogem? Ogem is, of course, NTU's NTU's exchange program. Yeah, so perhaps someone could shed some light. Yep.
I am the faculty study abroad coordinator for USP, so maybe I'll take this question. Okay, so the difference between study abroad and Ogem. Ogem is an exchange, and the idea of an exchange is just that. A student from NTU goes to a different university. That different university sends a student in exchange to NTU, and so probably most students at NTU definitely most students at NTU, if they do go and study somewhere else, they'll do it through Ogem. But NTU-USP offers an additional opportunity which works a little bit differently, which is that we simply send a student to another university. We don't need to get a university back in exchange. And the advantage of that is that we, sometimes universities don't have anyone that wants to study in NTU or maybe wants to study in Singapore. And so they simply will not be able to offer a slot through Ogem. Study abroad doesn't have that restriction. And so what we do is we partner with some really, really excellent universities around the world, some in the UK, some in the United States, some in Australia, some in the continental Europe, And so the idea is that we can send as many students as we would like. And so that is really the main difference. But something else that I think is important is that, Ogem is not simply for non-USP students. Many of our students do go through go to Ogem, but they have an additional advantage as USP scholars, excuse me, which is that they get to go to the head of the queue, ahead of non-scholars. So, if you're interested in going to a particularly attractive university, and let's say, if you want to go study, do an exchange at Oxford or an exchange at UC Berkeley or something like that, there are going to be many, many NTU students who are interested in also doing that through Ogem. And so one of the great things about being a USP scholar is that you will get to jump right to the head of the queue.
Yeah, so yeah, thank you so much, Prof. Justin, for answering the question. Perhaps we could also just get your recommendation as well. Would you advise students to go on exchange, bearing in mind, of course, if, in a post-pandemic world, what do you think going on exchange? What do you think going on exchange helps students with?
I would absolutely advise students to go on exchange or study abroad. I mean, I think that if you talk to most people who've done that at their time at university, they'll often say, this was actually the best part of my education. It was the most memorable experience. It was the period in which I grew the most. It is such a rich, intense time for students. And the advantages are really quite many. I mean, first, you may be taking subjects in a discipline that you're familiar with, your home program, but you're getting them through an entirely different pedagogy. You're getting a new angle on whatever it is you're studying. In many cases, there are also courses that you'll be able to take at that university that simply won't be offered at your home university. Universities, even the biggest universities don't offer everything. So from the academic side, you have more flexibility in your courses. You have a kind of different approach to learning, and part of that, of course, is having classmates who are from a different culture around you. And then there's that kind of broader social experience. Part of what we do at USP is we're trying to develop our students into more engaged global citizens. And, we know that, I think it's maybe especially true in some of the disciplines represented today. I think anyone who's in business, for instance, today has to think about a global marketplace. They have to think about how to communicate with other cultures. They have to simply know what other parts of the world are like. And there's really no more effective way than traveling to a place, not just as a tourist, but learning what it's like to live in a place that is different. And so I think that there's the kind of the immersive cultural experience that goes along with it. And I think there's something to be said also. It's just a tremendous amount of fun. I think for a lot of people. Of course, not everyone likes to travel, and you're not required to do this. But I think if you have even the slightest interest, you'll find it very rewarding to go abroad. And so why not take the opportunity?
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And I would like to perhaps move the question to Daphne then, because she has been on exchange. What are some of your perhaps biggest takeaways from going on an exchange? And could you share with us where you went and so on?
Okay, I have more photos for everyone. Let me share my screen again. So I went to London. Like I mentioned, I'm in communication studies. I went on study abroad to King's College London, which is, sorry about that, one of USP's partner universities. So besides King's College, there's also University of Pennsylvania in the US. There's Australian National University. There is University of Edinburgh, also in the UK. And could you remind me of the last one?
Bryn Mawr College in also in the US, and we also have St. Gallen, which is in, I think, Switzerland.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. So I went to King's College London because for a comm student, this is where I could match my modules most easily. Yeah, so I'll share these. These are some photos from the campus, and one of the modules that I took was Introduction to Film. So this was a class I wouldn't have taken in Wee because I think it was out of my comfort zone. And being on exchange, you can take modules on a pass-fail basis, so you don't really have to worry about your grades. So you can, explore whatever you want to learn. Yeah, in terms of pedagogy, I wouldn't say it's very different from NTU courses because there's a how it worked was we watched a movie every week in a huge lecture theater, and then afterwards there'll be seminars where you discuss with a smaller group. But you do get to hear a lot of different perspectives because KCL had a film major, so some of the students were taking that major, and they went into a lot of in-depth discussions, and that was very rewarding to hear. So for my batch of going to KCL, there were a lot of us, 7 of us, sorry, there are 6 of us here. Ethan here, he went to Edinburgh, but the rest of us here went to King's College together. And this was the view on the way to school every day. So on exchange, you learn a lot of independence, and you learn how to be independent and life skills like cooking and shopping for groceries, planning for your meals and stuff like that. We celebrated Chinese New Year overseas also, so this was us in our hot pot over there. Pai and I went together with our group of friends, and yeah, so because it's a much more relaxed pace of life. One because you don't have to worry too much about your grades, and yeah, I think just being away, you're in the mood to travel also. So we went for afternoon tea, and this is one of my favorite places in London. So besides school, there's also a lot of free time to travel to other countries. So Ryanair will be probably your best friend if you're planning to go. And this is us. So I went to quite a few places. This is Budapest, Italy, visited the concentration camps in Germany, I think this one, Sweden, and this was us in another part of the UK,
Bristol.
and Amsterdam. So I would say my greatest takeaway would be, I can go back to Zoom. Yeah, mostly the independence. How do you live and manage your own life without your family, helping you living at home. And yeah, Ty, do you have anything to add?
Well, I would say my study abroad experience was definitely a crash course in independence. That's the best way to describe it. So down from things like managing your own finances, I've come back and I've learned so much more about just learning to manage myself. And I think a lot of things we take for granted in Singapore as well are things that we have to be more aware overseas. So that's one thing. I would say generally as well, as what Daphne mentioned, when you learn something overseas, it's through the lens, it could be through the lens of a different major, right? And that's what Prof. Justin shared as well. For example, when we learned about health communications, it's through the lens of linguistics rather than communications. And that was the kind of thing, that small things that really you take away with you and you bring back to Singapore, and it's something that gives you a very global worldview. On top of that, a lot of the universities under study abroad actually take in a lot of exchange students as well. So you get a very internationalized global classroom with people from different countries, different majors, and that's really something that that you really get to take in and you get to soak in. And so I think it was overall it's a very great experience, and really opened up my eyes, especially given that I'm someone who's very interested in the travel industry and tourism industry. I really learned a lot about it, being the traveler myself overseas. So that's probably one of my biggest takeaways. Yeah, okay, and I guess we'll just do one last question. If anyone has any questions from the ground, do also send them in right now. If not, otherwise we'll just move on to the very last question. I'll just give about
Actually,
10
Pai,
seconds.
can I just
Yeah,
add one small thing, which is that we as core faculty in the NTU-USPs actually instruct every single student in the program in the first year. And so we see our students in class then, and maybe in electives later on, but we still are part of this larger community where we are interacting with our students the whole way through. So you've heard these stories now about the richness of these experiences that they've had and how it's contributed to their own growth. But I just also want to add that as faculty members, we see this growth throughout the 3 or 4 years throughout the program as well. It's something that we're very proud to see our students develop over the course of their 3 or 4 years. So these aren't just experiences that our students have away from NTU and away from the program, but they come back to NTU and we hear about their stories and their experiences. And that the travel aspect in that sense is also part of our large community aspect as well. So it's really quite heartening actually as faculty members to see our students come in on day one of year one in their first year at university and also how they transform not just through our own curriculum, but through their whole university experience, which includes their experiences abroad as well. So we see that, and it's something that's really, we are just so super proud of our students, both right when they come in, of course, but also how they transform along the way. Just wanted to add that little bit.
Yeah, Pai, maybe I would also like to add a little bit about the NTU-USP curriculum. Okay, one point that, students always ask is that, apart from my home program, does that mean I only interact, with the NTU-USP community? I will tell you that the answer is no. The reason is because, when you are doing your study, 4 years or 3 years of study in NTU, apart from, getting very close by with all the students, or peers from your own program, and also with NTU-USP, but at the same time, for the NTU-USP, some of our electives, we are also opening them up, for other Premier Scholars Program students as well. So there is actually an opportunity for you to interact with scholars from the CNYang program, who are mainly the sciences and also the engineering students, the RAP Renaissance Scholars Program, who are, mainly the engineers and entrepreneurs, as well as, students from NIE, the Teacher Scholars Program, where, they are groomed to be future teachers as well. So there's a lot of opportunities for you to interact, with people from different programs and also different status. But at the same time, you yourself, you will also be taking some of the electives that I mentioned earlier on, where you probably will be also interacting, with a larger community, a students community of NTU. So please do not think that, you are only with school and NTU-USP, because that is actually a wrong, misinterpretation of being in the NTU-USP community.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you so much for sharing. I do have one last question here from Shane. We'll just run through it very quickly because we're running out of time. They say, I have a question regarding the electives. Firstly, how would students select their electives? Perhaps anyone want to? Okay, well, I'll just run through it briefly so we can speed run this. I would say, so in terms of elective selection, what happens is similar to the rest of the system across NTU, in that it's kind of like a, I think it's a first come. Okay, I can't remember. Sorry, is it first come first serve? It is, right? Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm a bit. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it is a first come first serve. So basically, you get a time slot where you can start bidding, and then after you can start entering the system. After that, you just submit your application in, and then you will be able to get the module on the spot. We sometimes do have extra slots. That's when we have this thing called an add drop period, which is also in line with the rest of NTU-USP, where you get to add modules or drop modules depending on the vacancies and so on. So it's the standard. It's in line with NTU's bigger system, basically. It's just that NTU-USP has specific time frames, different time frames that may be different from your home course, where you get to bid in a separate time. Yeah, so that's, in terms of bidding, that's how it goes. Can they choose any courses they want, or is there something, yeah, as well I mentioned, you are free to choose your courses once you've complete your core courses in the first year. So the core, yeah.
Maybe allow me to add on. So for year one students, you will need to complete all the 4 core modules. So you can start reading NTU-USP elective from your year 2 onwards. But usually, we do not encourage our students to read anymore in 4.2, which is your final year semester 2, because sometimes, you may not be able to find, certain electives that you really wanted to read. So we do encourage students, to take the opportunity from in the year 2 and also the year 3 for you to pick and choose whichever electives that you are probably interested in. Now, for NTU-USP, usually what we will do is, for course registration in August, we usually will send our students, for course registration for semester 1, which starts in August, your course registration will happen in June. And usually by end of April or early May, NTU-USP usually share, what are some of the electives that we are going to roll out, okay, for your interest. So you can actually discuss and also look at the calendar, to plan your elective accordingly. And also for the benefits of year 3 and year 4, usually they will be allowed, to read the elective with travel component. We usually give priority to our year 4 students and then the year 3. Okay, year 2, it really depending on vacancies. If it's available, then we will take in students. But for these classes, usually it is pre-register with NTU-USP office. So you don't need to go to the stars and start doing first come first serve basis. Yeah, because the system in NTU, it doesn't allow us to put in checks as in like, oh, are you year 4, therefore you go first. No such thing. So system is not really there yet. Therefore, we usually take order offline.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing. Just one last part to Shane's question, and then we will end off today's session. So I'll give Martin and Daphne just a few seconds each, okay? And you're going to tell me what elective, just one elective that you have taken and what your experience has been so far. Because I'll just start off with Martin first. We've talked about TOPS today, but we've not really touched on the other year 1 modules. So perhaps could you just share with us just one of the modules that you've taken?
Yeah, sure. Okay, I think one of the modules that stood out to me was quantitative reasoning. So prior to university itself, what I had an understanding about math and all was just basically about just numbers and data, that you were just to look at numbers themselves here and there. But then through quantitative reasoning, what you get to understand will be more about the qualitative side of data, how such data is constructed, what are some form of bias that could be present within these data itself, and henceforth, how do these bias affect the way we interpret them? And from then on, how the way we interpret also affects the various decisions that we carry out as a result. So I think this added on a really more qualitative component to say to build on my understanding of like numbers itself, and it really helped me to get out more of my previous view that math or just reasoning in general was just mainly all about looking at numbers, performing equations, or like just looking at algorithms in general, I would say.
Okay, thank you so much. Daphne?
Okay, this is really hard. Okay, if I had to choose one of my favorite modules, it will be the error and bias, which Prof. Becky teaches. So what we learn in that course is biases in our thinking that lead us to making certain conclusions. So I think after taking that course, I realized to be more open-minded, because certain things that people say, they might not be, it might be due to the way they interpret things rather than which is different from your way of interpreting things. So that teaches you to be more open-minded. Yeah. So that was very useful to me outside of class, and I'm still trying to apply the knowledge today.
Fantastic. Prof. Becky's very happy that you're thinking about that. I will just share mine very quickly. I'm taking mindfulness this semester. It's a kind of a trial module for the Living Well module, which is happening next year as a core elective. So for mindfulness, what we're doing this year is really learning about kind of the philosophy of happiness, or the philosophy of being in the present, and so on. And it's taught by our philosophy professor, Prof. Christina. And yeah, we do yoga in that class as well. So we spend 3-hour class, we have 1.5 hours of yoga. And for someone as inflexible as me, it has been quite an experience, and I really enjoy it. And it's really, I think, taught me to kind of learn a bit more about myself, and also really learn more about how to control my thoughts and so on. So I think these are really, as you can tell so far, we've shared such a wide range of modules that you have that we have at NTU-USP. So there's really an endless list. If you look at just on the website, the link that we've shared earlier, there's so many electives from different areas that you can take. So yeah, definitely, if you have any questions about them, feel free to drop us messages on our social media pages. Yeah, we do have more. Yeah, we do have some information there as well in the chat. So with that, we'll just wrap up today's session. Thank you so much for joining us today at NTU-USP Gave Me a Broadened Worldview. We hope you've taken a bit of information with you today. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to contact us via our social media pages. We are at NTU-USP OH21 on Telegram. That's NTU-USP OH21 on Telegram. And we are also at NTU-USP on both Facebook and Instagram. Yeah, and you can also look at our YouTube channel, NTU-USP, as well as LinkedIn, NTU University Scholars Program. It's all in the slide shown on the screen right now. You should have also received an email with links to our open house panels and more information and questions answered by NTU-USP. So if you didn't get your question answered today, don't worry. Go to the email and hopefully you'll be able to find the information you need. And also stay tuned to our social media pages because we'll be sharing more information about upcoming panels, including a panel on life of a science and engineering student. And we've also got other opportunities coming up. So with that, thank you so much. We've come to the end of the panel and thank you for spending your Saturday morning with us. Until next time, stay safe and take care. Goodbye. Thank you for joining us. You can leave.